Good day everyone, I am Pamela M. Quesedo and today we'll be studying Evaluating Selection Techniques and Decisions Chapter 6. So, um, diba in chapters 5 and 6, we've learned about the ways in which to recruit and select employees. So sa chapter na to naman, we will learn on how to evaluate whether a particular selection method is useful and how to use test scores to make a hiring decision. So throughout this chapter, we will encounter the word test. Okay? So in industrial organizational psychology, test refers to any technique used to evaluate someone. Thus, employment tests include such methods as references, interviews, and assessment centers. Okay, we will go with the characteristics of effective selection techniques. So, effective selection techniques have 4 characteristics. So, they must be reliable, valid, cost-efficient, and legally defensible. So, diba, these words, I know that these are very common na with us, especially kasi na always to natin napapakinggan way back sa psychological assessment natin, no? Kahit sa clinical assessment na clinical psychology natin. So until sa ngayon sa subject na to. So mag-review na lang tayo. So reliability. So when we say reliability, it is the extent to which a score from a selection measure is stable and free from error. So, if a score from a measure is not stable or error-free, it is not useful. So, for example, no, suppose na gagamit tayo ng ruler to measure sa length ng boards, no? Para gagamitin natin, for example, gagawa tayo ng doghouse. Na gusto natin na every board, no, mag-measure siya ng 4 feet long. Pero each time na mini-measure mo siya gamit ng same ruler na ginamit mo, no, we get a different number. So, which means na hindi reliable yung measurement tool na ginamit mo. So, the same is true of selection methods. If applicants score differently each time they take a test, we are unsure of their actual scores, no? For example, no, gagamit ka ng test na to para mag-measure, for example, sa skills ng employees mo. But every time, no, ginagamit mo yun na test, iba-iba yung scores na lumalabas, which means na yung test mo ay hindi reliable. So, consequently, the scores from the selection measure are of little value. Therefore, reliability is an essential characteristic of an effective measure. Test reliability is determined in 4 ways, no? Test, retest, reliability, alternate forms, reliability, internal reliability, and score reliability. So we will go with one characteristic of reliability, the test, retest reliability. So from the word test, retest, which means that each one of several people take the same test twice, no? Same test yung gagamitin niya, yung i-take niya twice, no? Yung first na scores niya na from first administration ay i-correlate natin sa second to determine whether they are similar. Kung parehas, the test is said to have temporal stability. So, there is no standard amount of time that should elapse between the 2 administration of the test. However, yung time interval mo, no, sa pag-retest mo should be long enough so that specific test answers have not been memorized, no? Dapat long enough siya na para hindi mo ma-memorize yung test answer pero short enough na yung tao hindi mag-change. Okay? Hindi mag-change. So, for example, no, halimbawa, 3 years na yung nag-elapse between the administrations of, for example, personality inventory. So, there may be a very low correlation between the two sets of scores. But the low correlation may not be the result of low test reliability. Bakit? No? It might be na nag-change yung answers niya sa personality inventory the second time around because the personality of the people, of that person, change in the sample over time. So, dapat hindi siya maging, dapat short enough siya na hindi mag-change yung personality ng isang tao. Pero long enough dapat siya na hindi niya ma-memorize yung test. So, obviously, yung test retest, hindi siya reliable and, hindi siya appropriate for all kinds of tests, no? Hindi naman siya, it would not make sense naman kung i-measure mo yung test retest reliability sa mga short-term moods or feelings. For example, no, mga trait anxiety inventory, no? Yung mini-measure niya yung trait anxiety and state anxiety. So, hindi siya useful na gagamitin. So, next, another characteristic is the alternate forms reliability method. So, two forms of the same test are constructed, not two forms. So, the scores on the two forms are then correlated to determine whether they are similar, no? If they are, the test is said to have form stability. So, why would anyone use these methods, no? Bakit, no? Bakit na naman gagamit yung alternate forms reliability? So, if there is a high probability that people will take a test more than once, two forms of the test are needed to reduce the potential advantage to individuals who take the test a second time. Two forms sa isang test. Paano yan? For example, no, you are taking a board exam, no? For example, para maging registered psychometrician ka. However, sad to say, no, hindi ka napasa sa first test mo, no? Sa first na pag-take mo ng board exam. So, next year, magte-take ka na naman ng board exam for psychometrician. So, kailangan na ibang forms na naman yung gagamitin because, here, no, ang question is, pag mag-retake ba daw tayo ng exam, will actually result in higher test scores? So, a meta-analysis by Hosknech, Halpert, Di Paolo, and Moriarty Gerard 2007 found that applicants retaking the same cognitive ability test will increase these scores about twice as much as applicants taking an alternate form of the cognitive ability test. Not surprisingly, the longer the interval between the two test administrations, the lower the gain in test scores, no? Multiple forms din naman yung kakailangan, hindi lang sa mga nagre-retake ng mga test, no? For example, din kahit yung sa schools nyo, no? Nabagsak ka sa exam and then you were given a chance to retake, no? So, dito naman, no, multiple forms din naman gagamitin sa mga large groups na mga test takers o mga examiners na prone sa cheating, no? Or perhaps one of your professors has used more than one form of the same test to discourage cheating, no? Sila form A, ikaw form B, no? The last time you took your written driver's test, multiple forms probably were used, just as they were when you talk at the SAT or act to be admitted to college. As you can see, multiple forms of a test are common. So, i-recall natin yung test and test reliability na ang time interval between administration usually ranges siya from 3 days to 3 months, yung test reliability. Sa alternate forms reliability naman, the time interval should be as short as possible. If two forms are administered 3 weeks apart and the low correlation results, the cause of the low reliability is difficult to determine. That is, the test could lack either from stability or temporal stability. Thus, to determine the cause of unreliability, interval needs to be short, no? Para mas malaman natin yung reliability ng mga test. So, in addition to being correlated, two forms of a test should also have the same mean and standard deviation. Hindi pwede na iba yung mean and SD mo sa form A kasi sa form B, no? So, next is we have the after sa test reliability, we'll have the internal reliability, no? Internal reliability, parang hindi ko yata siya nasulat. Internal reliability. So, it is a third way to determine the reliability of a test or inventory. It is to look at the consistency with which an applicant responds to items measuring a similar dimension or construct, no? The extent to which similar items are answered in similar ways is referred to as internal consistency and measures item stability. Ano daw? Yung similar items na answered siya in similar ways is called internal consistency. So, in general, no, the longer the test, the higher its internal consistency. That is the agreement among responses to the various test items. So, para mas maintindihan natin na point na to, so let us look at the final exam for this course. Example, no? If the final were based on 3 chapters, sa exam na to, for example, no, based sa 3 chapters ang final, would you want a test consisting of only 3 multiple choice items? No? Musugot ba ka nga kung mag-exam ta nga 3 chapters, no? Pero about 3 chapters ang coverage unya ang atong test kay nag-consist lang og tulora ka multiple choice items. No, dili gid ta mosugot ana. Kay ngano? If you made a careless mistake in marking your answer or fell asleep during a part of the lecture from which a question was taken, your score would be low. But if the test had 100 items, no, mas maraming items, one careless mistake mo, or may na-miss ka na isang part lang sa lecture mo, would not severely affect your total score. That is internal reliability. That is, yan, no? Internal reliability. So, internal reliability, no, may tinatawag dito tayong item homogeneity, no? Sa slide na nakikita nyo, it has another factor that can affect the internal reliability of a test. Pag sinabing homogeneity, no, from the word itself, homogeneity, that is all the items measure the same things, no? So question is, do all of the items measure the same thing or they measure different constructs? The more homogeneous the items, the higher the internal consistency. Of course, no? For example, no? If we computed the reliability of the entire exam, it would probably be relatively low, no? For example, no, if you are taking your final exam based lang sa 3 chapters. Why? Because the material assessed by the test questions is not homogeneous. They are measuring knowledge from 3 topic areas, 2 sources, and 2 knowledge types. If we broke the test down by chapter, source, and the item test, the reliability of the separate test components would be higher because we would be looking at groups of homogeneous items. So, when reading information about internal consistency, sa mga journal article natin or sa mga test manual, may encounter natin yung three terms na to na nagre-refer sa method kung paano natin ma-determine yung internal consistency ng isang test. Split half, coefficient alpha, and KR20 or the Coder-Richardson Formula 20. So, yung split half method, no? I know na familiar na kayo nito, no? It is the easiest to use, yung split half method. Because as items on a test are split into two groups, no? Usually, all of the odd numbered items are in one group and all the even numbered items are in the another group. The scores on the two groups of items are then correlated. Because the number of the items in the test has been reduced, researchers have to use a formula called Spearman-Brown frequency to adjust the correlation. So, Cronbach's coefficient alpha naman and the KR20 are more popular and accurate methods of determining internal reliability, although mas mahirap siya, mas complicated siya, no, and are calculated by computer program rather than by hand, no. The difference between the two is that yung KR20 is used for test containing dichotomous items. So, dichotomous, mga dalawang lang yung mga choices, no? For example, mga yes or no, true or false. So, whereas yung coefficient alpha naman, pwede naman ay can be used hindi lang sa dichotomous items, pero maggamit din siya sa mga test containing ng interval and ratio items such as 5-point rating scale. So, yun siya. Next is the scorer reliability. So, it is a fourth way of assessing reliability. It is yung score reliability. So, it is an issue in projective or subjective tests in which there is no one correct answer. No? Walang correct answer, but even test scores with the use of K suffer from score mistakes. So, for example, no, score reliability, gaya yung sa mga hurado sa mga tawag ng tanghalan, no? Diba yung, how can we know it's inter-rater reliability, no? Sa mga scorers, no? Sa bawat paano sila mag-rate, no? Sa mga singers, no? So, when human judgment of performance is involved, score reliability is discussed in terms of inter-rater reliability. So, that is, kung yung two interviewers ba, mag-give ba ng applicant ng similar ratings? Or kung yung dalawang supervisor ba, mag-give sa employee ng similar performance ratings? So, if you are a fan of American Idol, how would you rate the inter-reliability among Simon, Paula, and Randy? So, yun siya. So, paano natin na-evaluate yung reliability ng test, no? Ma-evaluate natin sila, no, by using these two factors na i-considered natin. Yung magnitude ng reliability coefficient ng test at yung mga people na who will be taking the test. So, paano naman natin ma-evaluate yung coefficient? You can compare it with the reliability coefficients typically obtained for similar type of test, no? Sa yung second factor naman, yung considering the people who will be taking your test. For example, no, if you will be using the test for managers, but the reliability coefficient in the test was established with high school students. So, you would have less confidence that the reliability coefficient would generalize well to your organization. No? So, ganun yun siya. Yun yung dalawa na factor na dapat nating consider, yung magnitude ng reliability coefficient and the people who will be taking the test. So, next, we have here the word validity. So, yung validity, it is the degree to which inferences from scores on tests or assessments are justified by the evidence. So, as with reliability, a test must be valid to be useful. Kasi alam nyo, guys, it doesn't mean that a test na high yung reliability niya is valid na siya. Pwede ring, it might mean na reliable yung test pero hindi siya valid. So, valid, no, it is important, no? But just because a test is reliable does not mean it is valid. Yung valid kasi, ito yung kung ano talaga yung tina-target mo, ano talaga yung mini-measure mo. So, for example, no, you suppose that we want to use height requirements to hire typists, no? Our measure of height, ruler, would certainly be reliable measure. Most adults will get no taller, and two people measuring an applicant's height will probably get very similar measurements. It is doubtful, however, that height is related to typing of performance, no? Thus, a ruler would be a reliable measure for height, but height would not be a valid measure of typing for performance. Hindi kasi yun yung tina-target mo. So, yun yung validity. So, yung validity, no? We have yung sa previous slide natin, no? Balikan muna natin, na sa validity, no? May 5 common strategies siya. Ang content, criterion, construct, phase, and known group. So, let's proceed with content validity. No, sa content validity natin, it is the extent to which test items sample the content that they are supposed to measure. So again, let us use your final exam as an example, no? For example, our instructors tells us na yung final exam natin will measure our knowledge about sa chapters 8, 9, at saka 10. So, yung each chapter niya is the same length, and your instructor spent 3 class periods on each chapter. So the test will have 60 questions. For the test to be content valid, the items must constitute a representative sample of the material. So kailangan patas siya, no? Patas siya yung pagbibigay mo. So, yan yung content validity. So for example, kung sa test ni ma'am, 60 items. Tapos yung coverage niya is chapter 8, 9, and 10. So, dapat yung 60, i-divide mo siya sa 3. Ganyan yung items niya na dapat masali sa test. For example, no, 20 items for chapter 8, 20 items for chapter 9, and so on, no? So, para sa industry sa industry na to, no, a job analysis should first determine the task and conditions under which they are performed. Kailangan alam yan ng job analysis. Alam natin yung KSAOs, right? Dapat ma-measure yung knowledge, skills, abilities, at other characteristics, no? So, all of the important dimensions identified in job analysis, dapat ma-covered yan lahat sa selection process. Hindi pwede na yung ma-cover lang is yung knowledge, yung skills. How about the abilities, no? At yung ibang characteristics. So, hindi yun pwede. So, next is criterion validity. Yung criterion validity refers to the extent to which a test score is related to some measure of job performance called a criterion. So, commonly used criteria include supervisor ratings of performance, actual measures of performance, attendance, tenure, trainee performance, and all disciplines problem. Yun sa. So, criterion validity is established using one of 2 research designs, no? Magamit yan sa concurrent or predictive. So, ano naman yung concurrent validity design? It is a design, no, a test given to a group of employees na andyan na sila sa job. The scores on the test are then correlated with a measure of the employee's current performance. Tapos, i-correlate naman yan siya sa measure sa mga employees sa current performance nila. Yung predictive validity naman, yung test ina-administer siya sa group applicants na iha-hired pa lang. Yung concurrent, no, or they are already on the job, yung predictive validity, iha-hire pa lang sila. Then the test scores are then compared with a future measure of job performance, no? Yun siya. In the ideal predictive validity situation, every applicant is hired and the test scores are hidden from the people who will later make performance evaluation. So, what is validity? Generalization, yung or VG, no? It is the extent, it is also a major issue concerning the criterion validity of test, no? It is the extent to which a test found valid for a job in one location is valid for the same job in different location. So general siya, no? It means na valid ang valid ang test na to sa isang job at ma-valid din siya sa ibang job sa same job sa different location. So, it was previously thought that the job of the typist in one company was not the same as that in another company. The job of police officer in one small town was not the same as that in another small town. And the job of retail store supervisor was not the same as that of supervisor in a fast food restaurant. So, yun yung mga hypothesis nila before, but the researches, no, ngayon indicated na yung the test valid for a job in one organization ay valid din sa same job sa another organization. So, what is construct validity, no? Construct validity, another characteristic sa validity, no? It is the most theoretical of the validity types. It is defined as the extent to which a test actually measures the construct that it purports to measure. So, construct validity is concerned with inferences about test scores. Ang construct validity, no, about siya sa test scores, wherein it is opposite sa content validity na ang mini-measure niya is about test construction. Again, ang contrast validity, mini-measure niya yung test scores. Concern siya sa test scores. Ang content validity, concern siya sa test construction. So, another method of measuring construct validity is non-group validity. This method is not common and should be used only when other methods for measuring construct validity are not practical. With non-group validity, a test is given to two groups of people who are known to be different on to others, no? On the trait in question. So, for example, suppose we wanted to determine sa validity ng a new honesty test. No? The best approach might be a criterion validity study in which we would correlate our employees' test scores with their dishonest behavior, such as stealing or lying. Pero yung problema is, paano natin malaman kung sino yung nagnakaw at sino yung naglie? We could ask them, pero aamin ba yung mga dishonest people? Probably not. So instead, we decide to validate our test by administering it to a group known as honest or praise and to another group known as dishonest. So, yan yung non-group validity. So, choosing a way to measure validity, no? Wondering if ano pa talaga yung methods na best na gagamitin, the answer is it always depends. No? It depends. It depends kung ano yung situation as well as the person conducting the validity study is trying to accomplish. If it is to decide whether the test will be a useful predictor of employee performance, then content validity will be usually used. And the criterion validity also will be conducted if there are enough employees and if a good measure of job performance is available. No test will ever be valid for all jobs, all criteria. So for example, walang test na, for example, no, ito, criterion validity test yung gagamitin mo is valid siya sa lahat na jobs and all criteria. So, phase validity. Ano yung phase validity? It is the extent to which a test appears to be job-related. Perception siya yung phase validity, no? Yung pagtingin, for example mo, you are having an exam sa industrial organizational psychology, no? Tapos pagtingin mo sa mga choices, sa mga question, it's like hindi siya pang IO, no, na subject. Parang ano siya, parang for example, pang clinical psychology, no? Pang psychological assessment siya na subject. So, iba na agad yung perception mo. So, yung perception, it is important because if a test or items do not appear valid, kung hindi valid, yung mga test takers, parang mawawalan sila ng gana pag-take, no? Mawawalan sila ng confidence. Kahit yung mga administrators, mawawalan sila ng tiwala, ng confidence sa results. So, it's the same with the job applicants, no? If they do not think that a test is job-related, kung hindi ito job-related, of course, their perceptions of its fairness decrease, as thus their motivation to do well on the test decreases as well, no? If employees involved in a training session on interpersonal skills take a personality inventory and are given the results, they will not be motivated to change or to use the results of the inventory unless the personality profile given to them seems accurate. So, it can be increased by informing the applicants about how test relates to job performance, and acceptance on test results also increase when applicants ay nakakatanggap ng mga honest feedbacks about their test performance and are treated with respect by the test administrator. So we have here the terms Barnum statements. So yung Barnum statements are the statements so general that they can be true for almost everyone. So for example, no, if I'm going to describe you as sometimes being sad, sometimes being successful, and at times not getting along with your best friend, it can be na I am very accurate. However, these statements describe almost anyone. So face validity by itself, it is not enough. Yan yung ating tandaan. So, finding reliability and validity information, pwede natin yung makuha sa most common source ng test information, ang Mental Measurements Yearbook, MMY, na nagko-contain siya ng information about thousands of different psychological tests as well as reviews by test experts. And pwede din tayong makakuha ng information from Test in Print 7. So, ano naman yung cost efficiency? If two or more tests have similar validities, then cost should be considered. For example, what if parehas yung validity ng dalawang test? So, cost efficiency yung titingnan natin. So, for example, yung may isang test na to na very expensive, no? Very expensive. So, tapos hindi siya pasok sa budget nyo, no? So, you will going to use another test na same pa rin and may hindi gaanong malaki yung expenses nyo. So, a particular test is usually designed to be administered either to individual applicant or to a group of applicants. Certainly, yung group testing is usually less expensive, yung group test, and more efficient than individual testing. Pero, may mga ibang important information lamang na hindi masasali sa group testing nyo. So, for example, no? Diba, example na bakit tayo magkuha ng individual intelligence test para malaman natin yung way in which a person solves a problem or answer questions. Pero sa group test, yung score lang yung answer lang yung mas scored nyo. Hindi yung way paano yung tao mag-solve ng problem or answer sa question. So much for that. CAT or Computer Adaptive Testing is an increasingly common use of computer testing. So, thank you so much for listening. And up next, sa susunod na naman, na i-discuss ng kapartner ko ay establishing the usefulness of a selection device. God bless!